Conan O'Brien did a television show for ABC that was a satire of different things on television, like sitcoms, commercials, and dramas. And one of the things they did was a satire of an old rock and roll show, you know, those old late-night rock and roll shows. Conan O'Brien finally talked about that shocking night when Rob Reiner and his son Nick got into a big clash right in front of everyone. It happened at Conan's Christmas party, where he said he actually saw Nick yelling straight into his dad's face. What started as something awkward turned into something way darker than anyone expected. At first, nobody knew what they were watching. It seemed like a normal family argument. Tense, sure, but nothing wild. People kept chatting, thinking it would blow over, but no one realized they were seeing the start of something breaking apart right there. What looked like a heated moment was really the beginning of something serious. Later, everyone understood the vibe was off from the moment Nick walked in. He just didn't fit in. While guests laughed and filled the place with holiday cheer, Nick stood off to the side, cold and distant. He didn't laugh by the fire or join any conversations, just moved through the room like his body was there, but his mind was somewhere else. At first, his words were scattered, half thoughts that didn't make sense. People whispered, maybe he was nervous. But then his whole tone changed. It turned sharp and heavy. The room's warmth vanished in seconds. Every word out of Nick's mouth now hit his dad like a punch. The whole room went silent. Guests started exchanging uneasy looks, whispering things like, something's wrong. He's scaring people. Within minutes, all that holiday warmth was gone. The laughter, the music, the glittering lights, none of it mattered anymore. Right there, one of Hollywood's most respected families was breaking apart in front of everyone. For years, Conan O'Brien's Christmas party had been Hollywood's secret safe zone. A rare escape from the fake smiles, flashing cameras, and constant headlines. It wasn't just some industry party. It was a place where people could finally relax without worrying about being watched. No paparazzi, no hidden recordings, no gossip being traded for attention, just peace. Conan guarded that space carefully, giving everyone one night to breathe and feel human again. Guests from past years could still picture it perfectly. The air smelled like pine. The cinnamon drinks were warm and conversations flowed easy. Laughter there wasn't staged or forced. It was real, genuine joy for once. It was one of those rare nights when even A-listers dropped their guard. Hollywood stripped of its masks. But that peace shattered on December 14, 2025 because just a day later, Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle were found dead inside their own home. The news struck like lightning, sudden, shocking, and impossible to believe. Shock waves ripped through Hollywood the moment the news broke. Phones started buzzing non-stop. Timelines flooded and suddenly everyone was talking about one name, Nick Reiner. Interviews from his past started resurfacing everywhere, including one where Nick once said, "I never made a decision in my career based on money. Not once. I'm not going to lie. It's nice to have money, right? But I've also not had money, and I'm okay with that. I really wanted to keep my body of work." Those words hit differently now, like pieces of a bigger, darker puzzle. Overnight, that cheerful Christmas party memory turned into evidence. Every smile, every word, every glance from that night was being rewatched in people's minds like scenes from a mystery. Nobody remembered the laughter anymore, just that eerie tension they hadn't noticed back then. Everyone started wondering what exactly they'd missed. When Conan finally spoke up, he didn't sound like the funny late-night guy people knew. His voice carried weight, like every word was loaded with truth he wished wasn't real. He said it all started to crumble the second the door opened and Rob Reiner walked in with his wife Michelle and their son Nick. Guests from that night all described the same strange vibe. Not sudden silence or shock, but a slow, chilling shift. Rob flashed that classic Hollywood grin he'd worn for years, but it faded almost instantly. Not joy, just habit, like he was trying to cover up something heavy inside. Conan later admitted Rob didn't seem comfortable for even a second. Rob didn't glide toward friends or slide into easy conversation like he usually did. His eyes kept moving around the room, not like someone enjoying the moment, but like a man scanning every corner, reading every detail. He didn't walk in with the energy of a guest ready to celebrate. He moved like someone weighed down by something heavy he couldn't shake off. You could see him holding himself together. Every gesture, careful, every smile controlled, like he was scared one wrong move would let whatever was eating at him spill out. But soon, the tension in the room started circling around Nick instead. While everyone gathered in small groups, Nick stayed on his own, quiet, slow, and distant. His gaze floated from face to face, but never settled. Like he wasn't looking at people. He was studying them. Later, guests said it didn't feel like being watched. It felt like being analyzed. Like Nick was sorting everyone into categories inside his head that no one else could understand. Then came the moment that froze the room. Nick stopped right in front of a well-known comedian. No greeting, no smile, nothing. Just two calm, flat questions. Who are you? Are you famous? His tone was emotionless, and that's what made it so disturbing. No hint of sarcasm or anger, just this cold calm that sucked the warmth right out of the party. Rob stood there frozen and tense, trying to hold it together while the whole atmosphere quietly shifted around him. Rob didn't rush to stop Nick, but someone standing beside him noticed the tiny giveaway. His hand was gripping his glass so tight his knuckles turned white. That wasn't irritation anymore. That was fear. The kind only a parent feels when love, respect, and even reputation stop working. When nothing you say can reach your own child anymore. As the night dragged on, the tension that had been simmering finally broke through. But Nick didn't shout or lose control. And that's what made it terrifying. His voice was slow, sharp, and deliberate. Every word hitting like a quiet explosion in that still room. He stared straight into his father's eyes and said, "You're always talking about family values." Then he paused, his tone flat, cutting, "But everything is already arranged for the people you think deserve it." Rob froze, then fired back too quickly like he'd had this same argument many times before. Conan later said, Rob didn't sound like a director trying to keep peace. He sounded like a tired father just trying to survive the moment. "Nick, this isn't the time," Rob said. "We've already talked about this." But Nick wasn't backing down. He kept pushing, his words spinning around money, power, and control. He mentioned papers, deals signed behind his back, things he claimed were being hidden from him. Some guests later whispered they heard him mention a will, decisions, assets, authority, all supposedly handed over to people he didn't trust. And then came the line that shattered. "You know, it's interesting, but that never happened to me. And the reason it never happened is because I started my own company because I knew that I couldn't survive, making stuff for other people. And it's not an ego thing at all. It's just I know the way I am. So, I have to do what I think is right. And luckily I created an atmosphere where I could do that. Been brewing for years, quietly stacking up until they finally burst out in the most public and painful way possible." Michelle tried to calm things down, reaching out and touching Nick's arm gently, her voice shaking as she said, "Nick, not here, please." But when Nick turned to face her, his expression went ice cold. So cold that Michelle instinctively stepped back. That small move said everything. Whatever this was, it was no longer something anyone could stop. Everyone could feel it. The whole room shifted. The air got heavy, tense, and dangerous in a way nobody could describe. Rob tried to reason with his son to pull the situation back from the edge, but nothing worked. His calm voice, his authority, even his warmth, all useless now. He stood there helpless, watching as every move he'd ever made as a father just stopped working right in front of everyone. Conan later admitted he couldn't recall every word, but he could never forget the feeling. He said, "I didn't see a family argument. I saw pressure. One person pushing the others into a corner where every move felt wrong. It wasn't loud or violent. It was quiet, psychological, and absolutely crushing. Nobody in that room stepped in. Not because they didn't care, but because they simply didn't know how. Once that invisible line between parent and child snaps in public, there's no easy way to fix it. The confrontation didn't end with hugs or apologies. It ended with pure exhaustion. Nick was the first to turn away, leaving Michelle pale, trembling, and silent. While the entire room seemed to finally exhale all at once, Rob just stood there frozen, staring into space like he couldn't believe what had just happened. A close friend quietly moved beside him, placed a hand on his shoulder, and that's when Rob leaned in and whispered, barely audible, "I'm scared. I don't know what he'll do next." That moment wasn't full of anger. It was drenched in helplessness. Everyone could feel it. This wasn't about pride or control anymore. It was a father's fear, raw and real. When the Reiner family finally left, nobody followed them to the door. No goodbyes, no polite smiles, just silence. Heavy, aching silence that lingered long after their footsteps disappeared into the night. One guest later said it felt like watching someone walk out of a brightly lit room into total darkness with no idea what was waiting on the other side. When Conan spoke about that memory later, he couldn't even finish his sentence. He just stopped and sat there quietly, his eyes welling up. What hit him hardest, he said, wasn't the argument, it was the fear. The same kind of fear he'd heard before, whispered after parties when the laughter faded and the lights went out. Sometimes Conan and Rob would sit together in quiet conversation. No lights, no cameras, no audience, just two friends trying to make sense of life. Rob rarely said much. But whenever Nick's name came up, his whole voice changed. It got slower, heavier, more careful. Like every word carried weight. He'd talk about rehab, about the tiny flashes of hope that showed up for a while, then vanished just as fast. There was never anger in his tone, only this soft, cautious heartbreak. Like he was scared even one wrong word might push his son further away. That's the fear Conan remembered, not a celebrity scared of bad press, but a father terrified his child was slipping out of reach. Rob once sat quietly, almost like he was speaking to himself. Being a father in this situation is incredibly hard. You want to protect your child. But at some point you realize the final decisions aren't in your hands. So when he whispered, "I'm scared," that Christmas night, it didn't come out of nowhere. It was the echo of years of warning signs he couldn't ignore anymore. Those signs had been right there, visible to anyone who looked close enough, but too painful to face. Later reports filled in the blanks most people never knew. Nick had been battling addiction for years, going through rehab after rehab, each one offering brief hope before things slipped again. People close to him said it wasn't just addiction. He was fighting serious mental health struggles and deep emotional swings in the weeks leading up to that night. Everything seemed to fall apart around that same time. Doctors had reportedly switched Nick's psychiatric medication, a delicate change that, according to experts, can seriously impact mood, perception, and impulse control. Friends and family said Nick had grown restless and suspicious. Convinced that people, even the ones who loved him most, were taking things from him. But it wasn't just about money or possessions. He believed people were stealing his trust, his loyalty, his love. That creeping paranoia spread through his thoughts like wildfire. Authorities had apparently been called to the Reiner home multiple times over the years. Arguments that flared up, cooled off, then quietly built again beneath the surface. Each time, the tension faded, but the deeper issue never left. After the tragedy, investigators began tracing Nick's movements with eerie precision. Surveillance footage from a nearby gas station showed him calm, almost too calm, buying a drink and chatting politely with the cashier. Experts later said that stillness was the most chilling part. It didn't show chaos, it showed control. Reports said he took public transportation afterward. No panic, no rush, no trace of someone unraveling, just that same haunting calm, like he was moving through the world unseen. Investigators later mapped out his steps from those days, quiet routes, planned detours, and an unsettling effort to stay invisible, leaving everyone wondering what was really running through his mind. At one hotel, investigators found the windows covered with bed sheets, a small but chilling detail that screamed, he thought he was being watched. Even now, not every part of that timeline has been confirmed. But one haunting question remains. How much control had Nick really lost? And how much had he been holding on to the whole time? Right now, Nick is being held in a high-security psychiatric unit under constant watch. In court, witnesses said he looked completely detached, silent, withdrawn, wearing a suicide prevention gown. He barely spoke except to quietly answer, "Yes, Your Honor." The next hearing's already been postponed, with the judge granting more time for mental competency evaluations. To the world, it's just another court date. But for those who loved Rob and Michelle, it's a wound that won't heal. What makes this story so haunting isn't just the tragedy itself. It's everything that came before. The tension, the warning signs, the quiet moments everyone brushed off, hoping they'd just fade away. Conan said when he finally decided to speak, he wasn't exposing a scandal. He was exposing the truth. Nobody wanted to face it, but the signs had been there all along, painfully clear and impossible to ignore in hindsight. The investigation is still unfolding, leaving everyone stuck between cold facts and unbearable heartbreak. But one thing remains chillingly certain: on that Christmas night, inside a home filled with laughter and holiday lights, something dark had already settled into the air. And no one saw it coming. It wasn't chaos just yet, only that eerie silence before everything falls apart. A quiet, unspoken fear that no one dared to name hanging heavy in the air. If